Alright. Hello, everybody. I have hyped this thing up far too much now, and it's going to be interesting to see if I can live up to this. Hope everyone is doing well today. It's a beautiful Friday afternoon here. Good old Kona land. You know, if I need to adjust the sound or anything, if I turn it down just slightly. Much as I like this mix. The whole point of this is to talk the Cafe de Toho whenever you want. Alright. So let's see. The purpose of this is basically, I think that crosscode as a game opens up is a good lens through which to examine some things about video game development and how people, especially streamers, play games. And I wanted to discuss some of these points because I spent long enough playing that game that I felt like I actually had enough thoughts to talk for 20 or 30 minutes. This is not always the case. A lot of times I just finish the game and put it out of my mind, but I had a lot of time to stew on this one, so I'm going to mostly just talk and try and get complete thoughts out. And people do have questions or things they want to add. Chat's not on screen, but if there's something I feel like adds to discussion, I'll definitely read it out loud and address it. Yes, it is. You're in the right place. Not the Valorant. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Ha ha ha. Alright. I guess I better actually start talking at some point. This intro is gonna take up 5 minutes of the 30 minutes I want to spend at this rate. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is sort of make sure we all have the background information and some like preliminary definitions, just so we're all clear. So the first thing I want to bring up is purity of experience. I guess think of it like spoiler culture and bias and stuff like that, right? A lot of people, especially nowadays with how the internet is, try really hard to ensure a pure experience. People will like stop watching trailers as soon as a movie is announced and try to watch it on day one so they never see any spoilers for it. I've done it personally myself. I've avoided trailers and gameplay demos for games I was interested in just because I wanted to experience it day one for the first time. Like completely fresh. And you know, try as we might, knowing basically anything about a game or a movie or anything will bias you in some way. If you know there's a twist ending, you're going to be looking for the twist, and you will either get so caught up in looking for the twist usually that you ignore details that are just interesting. I've done it myself. Or you'll find the twist and like an hour in and make it not as interesting for yourself sometimes. And spend hours waiting for the twist that you've already predicted to happen just to happen. So, problem with this is that I believe most game developers basically have to assume that the game needs to be playable if all you know is just what buttons are what on the controller, right? You have the controller or keyboard plugged in, Your controller is on. You know what, if the button prompt comes up, you're going to know which button to press. They have to teach you how to play that game. And unlike with a book or a movie or something like that, a less participatory medium, you, the player, can just miss. I'm not gonna say like miss. You can definitely miss things in books or movies, or you can fail to notice details, but you can miss even the chance to see part of the content. A lot of content can be locked behind the player learning the thing that you tried to teach them during their own gameplay. Right, so we have this idea, games are basically a unique medium right now where player participation, to get the player to experience everything you wanted to put in your game, you have to teach them using only things in your game exactly how to get to that point if they want to. Okay. I don't think that's not really a take. I think that's just true. But I think it's important going forward. So, to build on this, right? A few games that I thought were noteworthy as good examples of this. The one I will always shill for basically is Super Metroid, because Super Metroid is really, really good at making you use the item you just got to like get out of the room you're in. It sounds so simple, right? You get an item and you have to use it to get out of the room you're in. But like, by the time you're done, you know how to use every item, right? You don't really have to tell somebody how to use the items in Super Metroid. The game tells you what button to press when you pick up the item, it plays the cool item jingle, and then you just know there's nothing for you to do but try to use the item you just got to get out, right? When you get missiles, there's a missile lock door to get out. When you get super missiles, there's a super missile door to get out. When you get the high jump boots, you have to jump over a gap that's higher than the one you entered with to get out. Works in all sorts of ways. It's sort of the and like game devs really like to break up the Mario Bros. 1 analogy a lot, but I think the Metroid games are a good example of this, and a lot of Metroidvanias do copy this, but I think that's basically the blueprint, right? And even later Metroid games build on this, like with Metroid Prime, having, say, every single thing you can't interact with yet is scannable, basically, and if you've been scanning and paying attention to the world, the moment you're given that use item you just got to get out of here, you're able to put the link between this is the thing I'm trying to do, this is the thing this item is for. It just clicks immediately, right? Or you have even simpler games like Celeste, which introduce the mechanics one by one and then put them together over time to where you don't have to stare at a screen and just go, what on earth do I do? The whole way. You have a chance to figure out what every individual mechanic, and then your question is really just how do I synthesize those into a correct way of doing this thing I'm trying to do, right? You're never really left to make a huge leap in logic in a game like Celeste. So these games are like the S-tier masterclass versions of games you can just play and the game will teach you everything. You don't need to check Super Dash. I mean, it teaches the actual wave dash, right? I don't think the Super Dash wired might be hard. It might be much easier on some screens, but I don't think it's required. Whereas you definitely need to either wave dash or hyper to clear the chapter, right? Yeah, like obviously no game is perfect at this, right? Like you can make the most perfect like easily properly communicated visual cue everything, and someone will still just miss it. So this is veering into the realm of subjectivity, obviously, at this point. But the converse, the opposite side of this is, I'm going to say, and love it or hate it, most RPGs, right? Because, and this is something inherent to the genre in general. Right? Like there's a lot of things you can do at once the whole time you're playing. It's a lot harder to get the player to realize that this is the thing you do to deal with that thing. Right, even games like Chrono Trigger, which I would argue are really good at it for the genre, you kind of a lot of situations where you're probably just gonna die figuring it out if you try to do it spoiler free. You're gonna die or have a hard time. And like, as much as I love them, the Xenoblade games are notorious for this, right? Like the Xenoblade 2 tutorials last, what, 30 hours? Like you still get tutorials popping up in combat 30 hours into Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I didn't even learn how to play that game correctly from the game. I learned how to play it from a YouTuber, so it just reinforces my point, right? Yeah, it might be longer. It might honestly be longer. There are some pretty late tutorials. It lasts a long time. Or much as I hate to say it, like games like Trails where there's a huge opportunity cost to trying certain arts, we'll say. I'm getting to that. Good question, I'm getting to that. The question is, how do you feel about playing games wrong/blind? So the problem with this is that right, essentially the player choice aspect of playing an RPG means that you can't reliably know what the player has experienced and what they'll have been taught before. It's hard to create an encounter that guarantees that the player is like putting together the building blocks to understand the thing you're trying to convey, right? By this I mean, right, like maybe you intended for a boss battle to teach people that this is how a status ailment works. You should probably try to avoid having it cast on you. Hey, there's an item that prevents this. Maybe you should go buy one of those. Maybe you need to go buy poison resist because you got poisoned by this level 8 boss. And some players will just have bought 30 potions and just heal through the poison and never equip poison resist, right? You can't know. Whereas with a simpler game, you can know that a player overcame an obstacle in some way to get to this part. You can there's a certain amount of assumption you can make. And the effect of this, I would posit, is that when when you're comparing experiences, very subjective experiences of games like this with other people, you'll often hear like, how did you get stuck on this boss? Right? How did you get stuck on this boss? This boss is easy. You just do this, and it's like doing this thing the other person is talking about is like 5-step process that implies that you've known or checked about a bunch of other things, and you have an idea that this is strong in the game mechanics. Right? There's a lot of suddenly it becomes very, very variable. Right? So devs have to either make it so that if you do enough things, you're just always too strong, or you have to try to design around, like, you have to design your system to be very, very tight mechanically. And basically, I don't want to say narrow the experience because that's not true, but like you have to make it really punishing to do the thing that's not the thing you're trying to test in that encounter. Like prohibitively punishing. You have to beat the player into submission to your system and mechanics. Right? And if you're playing the game wrong, right? Maybe you're playing the game wrong. Maybe you're playing Trails without using time quartz and using clock up, and you just get insta-gibbed by enforcers the entire game, then you probably think the game sucks. Honestly, you probably don't have very much fun. Because it's just you're just waiting until you die, hoping that the boss goes easy on you or that you get lucky. Right? And it is hard in a lot of these cases to tell. It's hard to tell if you are playing blind. It's hard to tell if you're playing wrong. Like the devs were testing you on something, you just missed the implicit answer to the question. Yes. Yes, I'm imagining if you couldn't enter a next stage in Touhou because you're low on points and not playing intended. That would be very funny. Right, but the point is that you're allowed to not show, it's like, let's use a math example, right? You're allowed to not show your work and just do some pencil doodling and come up with an answer that mostly works, and the game just lets you through, right? So it becomes very, very difficult to distinguish between my strat is bad and I'm not using the game mechanics in the way the devs intended for this particular situation, and I'm just bad, I'm just executing my strat poorly. There's some pattern to this that I'm not picking up on. I just need to beat my head against it for another hour and I'll get through. The broad range of potential answers to a question leads to this confusion, I would say, in most cases. Obviously, a lot of people like the flexibility, but the important thing is that it opens up the ability for this to happen. It opens up the possibility. To conflate misunderstanding of the intended mechanics that have been taught and skill issues. If you're someone like me, you kind of want to know the difference because I don't like spending an hour doing things in an inefficient strat very much, but that's a very personal thing. A lot of people have very different tolerances on that. Actually, at this point, I will pause briefly. If anyone has any questions or things they would like to add to this sort of basis, give it like 2 minutes or so, maybe Anyone feel like they have anything to contribute to this part of the point? Doing the same thing. That's totally fair. So we have, I like flexibility in games. It's fun watching someone doing the same thing but in a different way. That's 100% fair. And I will just go ahead and say it outright. I'm not advocating against that. I see that as I see the possibility of this happening as sort of a necessary evil, we'll say. Isn't it fine when both strat not right plus not good enough like in Toho? I would say that's probably the ideal case, right? Is like if a game has such a prohibitively high skill requirement for some things that you find better strats while at the same time improving your skill. I personally find that very appealing. They had my ability to learn what Zun's idea for the pattern was, and my ability to dodge it often develop in tandem. What point do you think resource checking gets ridiculous? Examples like near Dark Souls. Not survive whatever you're fighting. That is a really good question. I think the most ridiculous thing is basically when you don't care that you got hit. You have to make it so people care that they got hit, right? Either you being low health has to be dangerous enough that even if you could resource chug, you might just fail, or you have to limit the heals. Obviously, Dark Souls is like the example everyone copies right now, right? Where you just have a limited number of heals for any distinct chunk of gameplay, and the test is just, can you survive this chunk of gameplay with this amount of HP? So there's definitely some balances. If we're talking about personal opinion, I prefer I like that Dark Souls-esque mechanic. I like the Hollow Knight mechanic where you have to hit the boss in order to have heals. I think that's done really well in my opinion. I think really what you want is you want heals to be some sort of trade-off, right? Like there's an opportunity cost to using a heal, and life gen mechanic. Yeah, okay. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Yeah, Fury has something similar, right? So that is a good way around this, I will say, is rewarding the player for a lack of skill issue by making their strat matter less, right? Is how I'll put it. Right? Your strat for dodging the boss matters less if you're hitting them really efficiently or parrying them really efficiently in Fury, right? So there are good ways and bad ways of getting around this, and there are as many answers to this as there are games out there. I feel like, except for all the Hollow Knight or all the straight up Dark Souls clones, of which there are admittedly many. There are numerous and many solutions to this. Which is why we will not go over all of them at once. Alright, so let's talk about crosscode specifically. I feel like we're all on the same page with some of these issues and how and why devs can get around them and stuff. So the first thing I want to bring up is crosscode's puzzles. And I will just say straight up, Crosscode might be one of my favorite puzzle games as such I've played in a long time. Maybe not ever, but it's up there. Crosscode does a lot of the similar things I mentioned before, where it will give you, Crosscode will basically give you a single room with a single thing to interact with, and you don't get to exit the room until you understand how this thing works. And then by the end of the dungeon, there's 2 or 3 of those things, and you combine all the different area mechanics, right? The steam engine with the ice, the bubbles, the steam sliders, like the spinny things, right? All that, you combine all that, and you're able to, at least if you're me and not Mitesh, you're able to take that and convert it into something that's a big solution to a huge puzzle. Right? The last puzzle of the game uses basically every one of those mechanics in one room and makes it work. Alright, so this is, in my opinion, just absolutely fantastic. It is perfect understanding of how to teach the player how to interact with the things in your game. And you can design your puzzles, and they do correctly design their puzzles around the assumption that you know how everything you do interacts with everything else you can do in the dungeon. And it feels really, really satisfying, in my opinion, to make it to the end of a situation like that, and you just look at something and you can just tell everything you're supposed to do. You don't have to trial and error or pepega around for an hour, right? You just, even though the puzzle is 3 times bigger than any other puzzle you've done in the dungeon, you have all the building blocks necessary to synthesize a solution. That's really good. That's really, really good. A lot of games don't do it as well. And it shows a understanding of the things that make playing a game interesting that a lot of other games really lack. Right? So that's the good news. That's the good news. So about the combat. And this is why rant is in the title, because oh boy. Game sucks. Yeah, okay. So let's talk about the combat in crosscode, okay? So much like other games, crosscode has an RPG type equipment and level up system, which makes your numbers bigger. Number is bigger equals you won't die, and everything will die faster. There are a lot of stats in the game, truth be told, especially if you count the like, I think they're called feat bonuses, as in not feat as in QBear posts them in my chat, but FEAT feat, like the pen and paper RPG type feat. And after playing the game for like 35 hours and doing a lot of side content, I still don't really know what most of those do. There's a Dark Souls 2 type ADP copy stat, which makes your parries and your dodge rolls better in some way. I'm still not sure exactly how or by how much. The stats that seem to matter, obviously, are HP and attack and defense, right? And from this, we get this idea that essentially the most important thing in combat is not anything to do with how you react to, how you read what the enemy is doing, or how optimal your damage combos are. Well, okay, the descriptions are there. The problem is that, like, you just get what you get, and this goes back to what I was saying before, right? You get a description of what it does, but you don't really get an idea from the game of how effective it is. That's the important thing, in my opinion, right? It's one thing to know that the focus stat makes your dodge roll and parry better. It's another thing to know that it soft caps at a certain stat and that at a certain point you get diminishing returns and you know, that essentially it just becomes useless after a certain point, right? Dota 2 is a good example, right? Where I don't know actually how you find out in Dota 2 that armor has diminishing returns, or heaven forbid how minus armor works. I'm not sure how you would ever find out that. How did people find out how minus armor, negative armor worked? I don't actually know. Hey, you can test it, but if you're just playing games, at what point does the game communicate to you that what minus armor does outside of PA hit me with meld and with a meld desolator strike and then I died? You don't actually know. You just get all you get from that interaction is Templar Assassin is a scary hero. He kills me. You don't actually get a knowledge of what you can do differently. Yes, and I'm getting to why this matters. I will ignore the actual historical discussion of minus armor for the time being, and I can't see the chat. So, in crosscode, right? Because the stats that are easy to understand and immediately obvious as to what they do are so monolithic, essentially the difficulty of a actual encounter is dependent very heavily on, did you find or buy a piece of armor high enough with high enough stats to deal with this thing? If the answer is yes, then you can basically face tank most of the game. If the answer is no, you can die in one combo. There is a vast difference. I don't recall this. Again, this is because there's so much missable content and so much variety in what you can do. I don't know for a fact that I didn't just miss a good armor set in half the areas I had trouble with. I don't know. How would I know? I wasn't reading the wiki the whole time I played. And because crosscode has this idea where there's a lot of hidden or missable or difficult to get equipment, not always easy to get equipment that's a strict upgrade to what you have. There's basically nothing signaling to you that, hey, I need to go get a new item to deal with this encounter. I never actually really thought that. I'm sure it was the correct or optimal answer at some point, but the game never really communicated that to me properly, I felt like. Because I either thought it was a skill issue, I was just failing to dodge something that looked very dodgeable. You go, maybe I'm just bad, maybe I need to figure out the dodge window on this one attack that keeps insta-giving me. Or you're looking for, okay, well, maybe I need to do something else. That's true. That's true. The older RPGs basically made it so that fighting enemies would always make you better at doing the thing that you're doing, right? But here's the second key point, or the next key point, is that in crosscode, grinding enemies is not that good. What you get from grinding enemies is very minimal and heavily scaled XP. And XP gives you minor stat increases and skill points. That brings me to the next point, which is that the skill trees in crosscode, you do not get enough points to fill them out. By which I mean that despite having essentially 5 different skill trees, none of which conflict with each other in any way, you will never have enough points to like max out a skill tree. As far as I can tell anyway. Maybe in the DLC you can. But I finished the game at like the same level as the final boss, more or less. I finished the game around the intended level, and I was missing probably like, I don't know. I was missing 20 to 30 levels worth of skill points to max out the skill tree. And this is in a game with limited skill refreshes, limited respecs. And yeah. And apparently this is a thing. A lot of the skills are actually locked behind story progression too. Like for balance reasons. You can't just rush whatever skill you think fits your playstyle. You have to wait. You're stuck waiting on the skill tree. And what this does is it creates a situation where it is very, very, very easy to not have a skill. And in my experience, it was only very late in the game that I really realized that, hey, I was thinking about things to talk about here, and I was like, what would a crosscode fan who came into my chat probably tell me to just do? And it'd probably be, hey, just use this skill. The skill is really good. So I started trying more of the skills after that. But like, the fact of the matter is that the game never really did anything to make me feel like that was the solution. Because again, I could basically just dodge roll anything. If I didn't have a skill that was good for something, I would just try to dash roll and just do my bad DPS. I'd use my bad strat. I'd just beat my head against until my bad strat worked. And the reason I found the whole thing that kicked off this thing is, how do the people that make that combat and that skill system make a puzzle system that's so perfect? Right? How do you do so well at leading the player to make correct decisions and explaining everything with your puzzle mechanics, and just essentially tack on a mediocre combat system that's really poorly explained? Maybe. Like, I genuinely don't know. Maybe there's different people on the same team. It's hard for us to know, right? But the fact of the matter is that on the one hand, you have a system that never lets you through unless you understand exactly what you're doing and have demonstrated proficiency and knowledge. And on the other hand, you have a system that either just lets you through for having numbers big enough or lets you beat your head against things doing things the wrong way and then feels entitled to difficulty spike you contingent on some knowledge that you never had, right? So it's very much like just a Jekyll and Hyde experience where you go from failing every time you see a challenge, you know exactly what to do or what to try. You go from that to, oh, I sure hope this thing doesn't have stats that are too big for me. I sure hope I don't get two-shot by this thing that just showed up. What would I... Where's the last equipment shop again? Right, those are the thoughts going through my head when I see a new encounter or a new area. It's, oh, how bad is it going to be if I don't know how this thing works? So, yeah, crosscode is really, really bad for that point. And going back to what we talked about earlier, in terms of healing, they tried their best to make it so that you had an opportunity cost for healing. But by the end of the game, I actually found that you can basically just eat an HP regen item every time the boss enters a recoil and be fine. And I beat the final boss on the first try, basically just abusing that and nothing else. And I think I played okay. Like, I wasn't button mashing or anything, but... The game evidently... It was fine. Like, it was... I'll go on record as saying the final boss fight is very fun and engaging. Mostly because it has a bunch of parts where it uses the puzzle mechanics, and the puzzle mechanics, as mentioned, are the good ones. But it's a real roller coaster of a game, and the leaves you feeling very mixed on the overall experience. And so, I don't think anything I said about crosscode is too controversial, except that maybe Mitesh doesn't like the puzzles as much as I do. Fair. You're allowed to not like the puzzles, but I think they are kind of objectively really well designed. In the sense that regardless of how much you enjoy doing the things they test you on, they don't really ever unfairly test you. The cause and effect is very clearly laid out, and there's not a lot of ambiguity on the puzzle mechanics. Crosscode are your channel points redeem. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. So the concluding point I wanted to talk about, because I feel like this is particularly interesting, is how do games like this intersect with streamer culture specifically? Like, how do we collectively react to stuff like this usually? Because in my notes here I have frame window for executing strats in simpler games is objective. It's true. The frame window you have, the frame window you have to execute a lot of things is objective. I meant in terms of backseating and trying to help people. Obviously, story spoilers are their own topic, but I think a lot of people have I mean, everyone's going to react to these open-ended situations differently, right? Crosscode warrant enough popularity to have streams. I'm not sure. I had one guy come in and basically just make a joke about one of the memeier characters and then never type again and then unfollow the next day. But I also, I'm not very nice to the one game Andes that come into chat usually. Mostly because I've just found that none of them are interested in sticking around for more than one game. Hence one game Andes. But you have this really big sort of super subjective thing, and because the player experience is so subjective in games that are more open-ended like this, people have a tendency to want to ensure that people actually experience the parts of the game they found meaningful. You want people to see the cool Easter egg that you really like. You want people to see your favorite DLC boss, right? You want, you want to share that. You want to share that part of the game with someone. You enter a stream knowing that unless a player does very specific things, they're probably just never going to find that. Right? And this is compounded by the fact that I think most stream games actually polarize. This becomes very polarized, right? Either the streamer doesn't want any help ever, and they'll ban you if you backseat them once. Right, your sing chat, you just get shot by a plebs using the roulette bot command. If you spoil or backseat once, you get shamed and escorted to the door immediately. Or alternatively, you're just kind of in a situation where you just accept that people are going to come in and tell you what to do, and just try to interact with it and you don't really care, right? Why do I care if it's spoiled? I'm just trying to have fun with the game. If I know about something, then I'll just do it. Maybe I'll see something interesting. So, especially with smaller streams and games where it's less known what things you can and can't do, it becomes a real question of how are you going to get across a subjective experience you're having without stepping on the toes of everybody else's subjective experience. And I feel like it's and this is my little soapbox on this topic, which is that if it's me, I prefer the understanding that sometimes the game just doesn't get the thing that it's looking to get completely across, and it's important to remember that a lot of times that's the game's fault and not the streamer's fault or the player's fault, I think is the conclusion of that point. I don't think most people who go on Twitch are very good about that, personally. Which is why you end up with people who are emotionally invested in everyone getting to see the coolest boss fight in Dark Souls, coming in and just backseating the gamer to the point where they'll be able to actually get to that boss. Right, it's an interesting dichotomy where the less a game teaches you and gives you, the more people will just try to tell you how to do things. I feel like it's good to bear in mind when discussing games like this, or when watching streams, it's good to remember that a lot of times the onus is on the artist to teach you how to understand their art, experience their art, and not the internet hive mind. Which is why I go out of my way to not tell people that they're just playing Xenoblade Chronicles 2 wrong, that their experience being bored to shit with the first 20 hours is valid. Right, if you hate Xenoblade Chronicles 2 because of how bad the first 20 hours is at teaching you how to play the game and what the game is really like, your experience is valid and I am here for you. I will defend your right to hate and give up on 20 hours in a game that I spent 350 hours on and love. You have my blessing. And my blessing to hate or be miserable with any game that doesn't correctly communicate how to play the game. All right. That being said, if you somehow think that like Celeste is unfair with the difficulty curve, or bad at teaching you how to do things, I might look at you sideways a little bit. But I guess opinions, right? Yeah, don't worry, I'm still in the Toho tutorial, you know, I'm still in the tutorial. I haven't captured all the spells in a single game yet. I'm still in the tutorial. Sorry, guys. You have to give me more time to learn. Exactly. It never ends. It never ends. So, that's about everything I wanted to talk about, and we're actually coming up on the hour mark, which just goes to show how bad I am at estimating these things. I guess probably spent about 20 to 30 minutes talking about the stuff I prepared, and the other 30 minutes reading chat and ad-libbing, so my copium is that I didn't plan poorly, I just didn't account for audience participation in my scripting and rehearsing, which I don't know how I would, honestly, aside from doing this more than once. Yeah, I hope everyone had a good time. Anyone have any closing remarks they'd like to add? Or anything we think we have to add on this topic? Atesh says game sucks. You know what? I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you don't like the puzzles, Atesh. I'm sorry. Always be in tutorial till we realize scoring is the only way. Okay, even Yusuke is still in the tutorial, man. The guy died to the guy messed up on a bunch of stuff today. Very painful deaths. That's true, actually, that's true. Not a skill issue. I didn't ramble longer than every sentence came out at about the length I intended it for it to, so that's good. Alright. Chat's getting a little salty here. Last call, we're coming up on the hour mark. If not, I'm going to go ahead and cut the I'm backup recording here. Go ahead and cut that. If you're watching this on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. I do things like this very infrequently, so if you like this, you're probably not going to like the normal channel, but maybe you like listening to me talk for some reason. 8C for the boys. Local recording is stopped. We'll see if I ever do anything with that. No, I'm gonna rest my hands actually. I've been pushing my hands a little too hard. I'm gonna give my hands a rest. I will be back tomorrow. I'm not going to bother turning stream on during Touhou World Cup. I don't think anyone that wants to watch me play USD also doesn't want to watch Yusuke play Touhou World Cup, so, and I want to watch it. So I'm just going to, I'll just come in and turn the stream on once Touhou World Cup ends. So some more PCB scoring. I'm assuming they're gonna go with like a really long reset timer too, probably. It's probably gonna be like a 90-minute reset timer for a category like that. So it'll probably be delayed like an hour, probably, or so. 2-hour reset timer, the other definitely at least an hour delayed, probably a little longer. But I don't have any RPG to play, so there's nothing really there's no reason I can't just play a little further into the afternoon on the Touhou than usual. Play some comfy USD and chill, and I don't know. I don't really have enough Celeste prepared right now. I think it's Celeste, so even if we reach the goal early, I'll like, I don't know. I'll think of something. Maybe I'll do like a UFO normal one-shot run with Sanai, just to see how easy it is for me right now after playing so much Lunatic. Alright, well, this is actually a good song to end on, so I'm gonna throw it over to the outro screen now. Hope everyone enjoyed. If I have anything as cogent as this in the future, since this seems to be well received, I enjoy doing this. I don't mind doing it again. But that's really contingent on me feeling like I have anything actually interesting to say that warrants like a full hour of just discussion. So no promises, but I'll probably give that one enough build up. So with that, I wish you all a good evening and a happy Friday. And I will see many of you, I'll probably talk to many of you during the TWC match, but hopefully I'll see everyone back here tomorrow for some EUSD attempting to be God Gamer content. I'll see if I succeed. Fingers crossed. And yeah, have a good evening.